was the verse where Chaitanya said, one is most degraded when he associates with someone who's attached to women.
Yeah, that means that's another verse which Mahaprabhu spoke.
Oh, yeah.
And it was in relation to a tyagi or a renunciate going into these two types of association. Try to remember how it starts. I was just remembering the verse the other day. Maybe I'll remember.
Yeah, because it's something like, that is the most degraded person, I think, something like that, right? He's most...
Well, in that verse, he's talking about two types. He's talking about Yoshit, which means the woman class, and then he's talking about those who are attached to the persons who are attached to them.
Yes.
Both of those. Vishayi, actually he calls it Vishayi. Okay. Jai Saparikar Shri Shri Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari Shri Shri Radha Vinod Bihari Radha Govinda Jiyo Ki Jai. Jai Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Sudarshan Chakra Jiyo Ki Jai. Jai Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai. Jai Shri Shri Nitai Gauranga Ki Jai. Jai Shri Nashringa Bhagavan Ki Jai. Jai Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Nuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. Jai Shri Sachinandana Gaura Hari Ki Jai. Shri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai. Shri Panchatattva Ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtana Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurun Dinataranam. Vancha kalpatarubhascha kripa sindhu bevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Namo mahabhadanaya Krishna prema pradayate Krishnaya Krishna chaitanya Namne Gauratishe Namaha. Narpita Charim Charat Karunaya Vatirna Kalo. Anarpita Charim Charat Karunaya Vatirna Kalo. Samarpaitum Unato Jvalarasam Swabhakti Shriyam. Hari Purata Sundara Dyuti Kadamba Sandipita Sada Hridaya Kandare Spuratuva Sachinandana. Jai Nityanandam Maham Nomi Sarvananda Karam Param Harinama Pradam Devam Bhagavaduta Shiromanim Sankarshana Karnato Yashai Garbhodashai Chapayogdashai Sheshaschayasyang Sakala Sanitya Nandakya Rama Sharanam Namastu. Bande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityanando Sahodito Gaudodai Pushpavanto Chitro Shamdo Tamo Nudo Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Sarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Brindai Tulsi Debai Priyai Keshavasya Cha Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavachai Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. First of all, I'm offering my unlimited Dandavat Pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most beloved worshipable Gurudev Nitya Leela Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Asto Tarasata Sri Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada. And I'm also offering the same unlimited Dandavat Pranams and Shraddha Pushpanjali unto the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Siksha Gurudevs Nityalila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Ashtotarashata Sri Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj and Nityalila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Asto Tarashata Sri Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And my Dandavat Pranams to all of my Sri Rupanuga Gauriya Guru Varga, to my Siksha Guru Varga, and my Dandavat Pranams to all of the Vaishnavas and all of the Vaishnavis. So Sri Upadeshamrita, the nectar of all instructions. Upadesh Amrita. And as our Gurudev also titled, the essence of all instructions, because in the Upadeshamrita there's a verse, the 8th verse, which tells this is the essence of all instructions. Yes. So it's very worthwhile that we are studying the commentary of our acharyas, commentaries, plural, and at the present time we are studying the commentary of Srila Sachidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur on the 2nd and 3rd shlokas of Sri Upadeshamrita. We are now, there are six different activities which should be given up, and then there are 6 qualities that should be developed. If one gives up the inauspicious activities, the bhakti will be protected. But if one engages in those, bhakti will diminish, even to the point of where it becomes destroyed, because in the verse, the actual word that's used is vinash, means destroyed. So what are those 6? Atyahara, prayashascha, prajalpo, niyamagraha, janasangascha, lolyam cha, shadbir bhakti vinashyati. So vinash means destroyed. We don't want our bhakti to be destroyed. Do we? Why don't we want our bhakti to be destroyed?
Because it's our only hope for attaining spiritual freedom from suffering and ignoring the Lord.
Yeah, that's one of them. That's true. Totally true. What else? Why we don't want our bhakti to be destroyed? I'll give some, you give some. Some reasons.
I was going to say there's forgetfulness of Krishna, which Hamsavati said also. And then suffering because of that.
Right. So why don't you want your bhakti to be destroyed?
They will forget about Krishna.
Yeah.
Because I want to try to be a disciple of my Gurudev and have a relationship with him.
What's the reason why you want that?
Well, I think Gurudev would say sometimes that for a Kanishta or a new disciple, it's sentimentality, right?
Okay.
But because Gurudev has come and made this connection, as he says, he's stolen your heart.
Yeah.
And so your heart's stolen and you have to chase after it.
Yeah, but very good. And why will bhakti becoming destroyed, why will it affect that? Or how will it affect that? If your bhakti is being destroyed, how will it affect what you just told? You want to be a good disciple of your Gurudev and have that relationship with him and all that. So how will our bhakti being destroyed affect that?
If we're not following our Gurudev's instructions and we're not following this Atyahara Prayasascha, and if we're not following Gurudev's instructions, then our understanding of our relationship with him may become weak. But from the perspective of Guru Tattva, then Guru does not neglect the disciple. Even Gurudev once said, even if you go to hell, I'll come and drag you out. So I think I've talked myself into a circle.
A good circle.
You lose the connection with your Gurudev.
Why do you lose that connection if your bhakti becomes destroyed?
Well, you're not following his instructions any longer. So
But how is it that by not following the instructions, you lose your connection by bhakti being destroyed? How does that do it? How does it happen?
Yeah, how does that happen?
I'm not trying to be complicated,
No.
but I'm trying to churn the topic.
Yeah, I'll take a guess at it. That in the spiritual world, everything's pointed to Krishna. And self-interest above Krishna's interest is not existing there. So it will force us to take birth again and try to work it out.
What will force us?
If we
self-interest.
Yeah, if we indulge our senses, we can get carried away, just like a boat might get blown away by a hurricane.
Okay, that's good. What did Prabhupada put on the masthead of Back to Godhead magazine?
Krishna's like sunshine, Maya is like darkness. Where there's sunshine, there is no darkness.
That's right. Where there's light, there cannot be darkness. But darkness is the absence of light, actually, right? So what he's saying is that if Krishna is there, because he said, Krishna is light, Maya is darkness. Where there is light, there can be no darkness. So wherever there's Krishna, there cannot be Maya. And what is Maya? Maya is what? Forgetfulness of Krishna, right?
Yes.
And as Hansagati Prabhu said, it is the loss of connection with Krishna, right? What did you say again?
That we'll be absorbed in our own
self-interest
rather than Krishna's Lord.
Right, and self-interest is not a good thing, right? Self-interest?
True self-interest.
Swarta means self-interest.
True self-interest.
And what is that true self-interest?
This
is a very important part of our Siddhanta.
Yeah.
Prahlad Maharaj told that.
To depend fully on the spiritual master and God.
Yeah, you know that one verse from Prahlad Maharaj? Nate vidu svarta gatim hi Vishnu. Does that sound familiar?
Mm-hmm.
Prahlad Maharaj telling Hiranyakashipu, he says, Nate vidu svarta gatim hi Vishnu. Means he's talking about the conditioned souls. He says, they do not know. Na te vidu. That means they do not know. Svarta gatim. Now, svarta gati is translated as the gati or the goal of svarta. Svarta means self-interest. Swa-artha. Like dharma artha, kama moksha, artha, swa artha. What does artha mean? It means our necessity, our necessities. Sometimes it's translated as economic development. Dharma artha, kama moksha. But artha means what is needed, what is necessary, our needs. Swa artha, what is our greatest need? What is our greatest self-interest? And in that first line of the verse, Prahlad Maharaj is saying, Nate vidu svarta gatim hi Vishnu. They don't know that the goal of their true self-interest is Vishnu, Krishna. He is our ultimate self-interest because he's actually the self of our very self. You see? He's also called that in many places in the Bhagavatam. The soul of the soul. So we cannot imagine in our conditioned state how much necessary is this relationship. It is the ultimate need, right? Ultimate need. But the word swarta, meaning self-interest, we also read that yesterday. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was saying that swarta, in connection with our own sense gratification, separate from consideration of Krishna, that is very, very dangerous. When we act for our material self-interest. And that's what keeps the conditioned souls rotating in the cycle of birth and death, life after life. So the human form of life is for learning, to learn this transcendental knowledge and truth from a representative of the Lord, the bona fide, pure devotee spiritual master, who enlightens us to the real self-interest. Because he is living in that realm, whether he's here in the material world, in the spiritual world, on any planet, he is only fully absorbed in Krishna, because the pure devotees know, they've experienced, they taste it 24 hours a day, how serving Krishna, love for Krishna, is the most sublime, the most rewarding, the most ecstatic existence that can be experienced, right? So the relationship with the Guru is to become obedient to his instructions. Why? Because his instructions are teaching us how we will be able to live in that spiritual realm. See? And to lose that connection with the Guru through disobedience, and the topic I was talking about was losing bhakti, because that's what the verse is telling. These 6 things destroy bhakti. When bhakti is destroyed, that bhakti is actually the seed of our prema that we want to develop ultimately. That bhakti is the seed is called Shraddha, okay, Shraddha. And the outward symptom of someone that has Shraddha, we were reading that also, is that they will become Sharanagata. Now that seed of bhakti, bhakti lata bij, we also mentioned this verse, how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told the famous verse, Brahmanda Brahmite Kono Bhagyavan Jeev. Bhagyavan Jeev means fortunate Jiva. So Brahmanda Brahmite, Erupe Brahmanda Brahmite, means that there are unlimited jivas who are continuously wandering in the universe. Brahmanda means universe, and Brahmite means to wander. That's been the story of our existence for millions upon millions of lifetimes. Only a seriously and deeply thoughtful person, upon hearing the Vedic knowledge and truth from a bona fide spiritual master, will receive this in his heart and then understand, oh, yes, this is what I must do. I must do this. Now, there are obstacles. A lot of the obstacles are coming from our own previous anarthas, from previous lives. And there are somewhat obstacles. But there's a solution. We can become purified from those obstacles by doing what? Nashta praeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya. Right? Bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By this, then bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. Bhakti to Bhagavan, it will automatically come. Naishtiki means firm, nishta. Okay. So when we first come to the lotus feet of Guru and Vaishnavas by the mercy of Krishna, then by hearing from them, that spark, that shraddha, the bhakti lata bij is implanted, and it stimulates our shraddha. Now when we say, like you mentioned, that become weak, right? And that was one of Gurudev's concerns. He expressed that many times. What happens? Where does that weakness come from? See? How does one become weak? And what's the opposite of weakness? Strong, nishta, very convinced, following properly Guru. But where does the weakness come from? Can you say where the weakness comes from?
Well, there's a constant battle. Without staying engaged in Krishna's service, then the past impressions come upon us.
Yes, the anarthas.
Yes. So they're always there. So it's a matter of staying fully engaged, constantly engaged.
Yes, that's right. And that's, yeah, go ahead.
Like Krishna says to Arjuna, that yes, it's difficult to control the mind, but it is possible by constant practice and detachment.
That's right. That's in relation to the yoga process. You know, when Arjuna said, what you're suggesting to me, because that's when Krishna described, you go to the forest, you lay the kusa grass, You begin to do Ashtanga yoga, you control the mind, the senses, all of this, right? And then Arjuna said, what you're suggesting, O Krishna, it seems almost like impossible, because it's as if you're telling us that to control the mind is like controlling the wind that's blowing. And that's certainly not a very easy thing to control the wind. So then Krishna answers with that verse that you quoted. Now that's in relation to that yes, it's difficult, but it's possible by constant practice and by detachment.
So that must apply to...
It does apply to bhakti yoga as well, but Arjuna was specifically commenting on how the suggestion of Ashtanga yoga. As we know, Ashtanga yoga is not the process for this Kali Yuga. But in previous yugas, especially in Satya Yuga, it was the Yuga Dharma, right? And people were well equipped for doing that. But they cannot do that now. They can meditate, which was Satya Yuga meditation. They can do yagyas, they can do deity worship and so forth, as was done in previous yugas, but they'll not achieve any real proper level of advancement from that. They cannot. Not in Kali Yuga. Not in Kali Yuga. But Harinam, Sankirtan, is the Yuga Dharma. And so therefore, the Yuga Dharma, the Yuga Avatar, descended and mixed with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Vishnu, the Yuga Avatar, mixed with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he's already there, he's the source of all avatars. And he introduced in this Kali Yuga the process of Nam Sankirtan, but which kind of Nam? Prem Nam Sankirtan. Bringing the jivas to Goloka Vrindavan, to Braja Prem. That is Mahaprabhu's mission. It's different. Did you know that? That in all Kali Yugas, there are 1,000 Kali Yugas in Brahma's day. There's 1,000 Yuga cycles in one day, 12 hours of Brahma. We know the exact number of years, billions of years. So, in the Kali Yuga, there is always a Yuga avatar, just as there is always a Yuga avatar for all the 4 Yugas. And that Yuga avatar is Vishnu. That's why Vishnu is the maintainer, because he's maintaining the universe for the purpose of the jivas playing out their fantasy of being separate from Krishna and eventually being introduced to Vedic knowledge, Guru, Sadhu, Shastra, everything, and gradually achieving their eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord. So in every Yuga, there's a Yuga avatar. And in every Kali Yuga, the Yuga avatar does preach this process of chanting holy names. But which holy names? And what mood? It's Vaikuntha Nam. The jivas can go to Vaikuntha by following that in other Kali Yugas. But this is the most glorious Kali Yuga of all the other Kali Yugas in the day of Brahma. And that's why it's given the name, what? Huh?
Danya.
Danya. You know what Danya means?
Merciful?
No. That's Daya.
Valuable.
Huh?
It's valuable.
No. That's not the direct meaning, but it is. Danya, glorious. Danya, Danya, Kali Yuga, Danya. Our acharyas have sung. How glorious, how fortunate. This is the best of all times. In the Kali Yuga that we are currently in, wherein Krishna himself combined with Srimati Radhika, the source of all avatars and incarnations, has descended to give that which was never given before. Yes, we have to learn and believe this, because it's true. Yeah.
Would you mind explaining the difference between, or the importance of the congregational chanting of the holy name? I was reading Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's commentary in Shikshastakam, and he was talking there about how it's the congregational chanting of the holy name. So what takes place when there's a congregational chanting versus someone sort of just chanting alone?
Well, the term Sankirtan has a couple of meanings. Samyak Kirtan. Sankirtan. Samyak means complete, and Kirtan means glorification. But also Jiva Goswami has explained, because that word is there in the Sikshastakam, first shloka, Chaitudarpana Marjana. And at the end it says, Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtan. So, it doesn't always refer, because Sankirtan means bahu, many persons together doing kirtan. That is the Yuga Dharma, congregational chanting. But the word Sankirtan, it also refers to complete kirtan. So, in that connection, complete kirtan is referring to the most elevated bhavak, bhakta, rasik, Vaishnava, who in extreme moods of separation and so forth is chanting the holy names. Like the ultimate, the gopis, the gopi Gita, and they're all kirtan, right? So that is the significance of Sankirtan. Both should be done in the Kali Yuga. One's own chanting, but also congregational chanting has more potency. There are many quotations. We can also bring those up and study the quotations by our acharyas, especially Jiva Goswami has highlighted this. That not only that, but because this is the Dharma in the Kali Yuga for the jivas to achieve perfection, therefore the other limbs of bhakti, there are 9 limbs, and the limb of kirtan must accompany the performance of the other 8 limbs in order for them to be fully successful. And kirtan should always be there. Anything more on that?
Thank you.
Yeah.
It says bhakti is destroyed by these items, but there's verses in the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam saying that, if you make whatever advancement you make, you never lose. So when they say destroyed, do they mean like covered for some time?
Yeah, it's mostly referring to currently in this life, in this body, if somebody is earnestly trying to become a devotee and advance in the pathway of pure bhakti, performance of pure bhakti. So that effort is gradually meant to become a constant effort. 24 hours. It's like the verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, Savai pungsam parodharmo yato bhaktiradhoksaje ahoituki apratihata ye atma suprasidati. One of the first verses in the 2nd chapter of Bhagavatam. So what is it telling there? That Savai pungsam parodharmo yato bhaktiradhoksaje. The supreme dharma of the jiva is to perform what? Ahoituki apratihata. Bhakti to adhoksaja, to the supreme transcendental Lord. And that bhakti should be causeless, not motivated. That's called ahoituki bhakti. And it should also be uninterrupted, apratihata. So the pathway of Shuddha Bhakti, pure Bhakti, which is not contaminated by karma, gyan, the whole definition verse of Rupa Goswami, right? Sanyabilashita Shunyam, that whole verse. So when one is making an effort to develop Bhakti, which means that it should be constant, it should be unmotivated, it should be under the guidance of pure Vaishnavas and so forth, that devotee begins to experience the awakening of love for Krishna. through different stages, you know. But if the devotee becomes, he ceases to become diligent, and he slides into these other activities, especially in the category of those 6 unfavorable activities for bhakti, the bhakti will diminish, it will be affected. And if someone is very much absorbed, pretty much full time, and becomes so much controlled, they're not following the first verse of Upadeshamrita, Vajravegam, Manasa Krodavegam, like that. Then they begin to do all these things that are unfavorable, they're acting in an unfavorable way for bhakti. What will happen? It will be like, well, you could use the example that's also used of an elephant that's bathing, and then they come back out on the bank and throw dirt on themselves, you know. But the development of pure devotion is a very sensitive thing. Those who are on this pathway, they are completely one-pointed. They are fixed every single day of their life. They understand what I need to do from the time that I wake up in the morning to the time that I take rest. And I'm praying and praying that in this life I can achieve ruchi, taste. I can become a pure Vaishnava, right? So from the very beginning stages, under the guidance of Guru and under the guidance of exalted Vaishnavas, we execute the limbs of bhakti, which is called bhajana kriya. Bhajana kriya. And we follow. But if somebody is doing like what we have been studying, the 4th thing that should not be done, niyamagraha, they neglect to follow, or they follow, but as we've seen, there's so many different applications. It's not what they should be doing on the level where they are. They should adhere to those rules and regulations until they meet the next stage. So we've seen this happen in our lives because we've been very fortunate to be pretty much the first crop, you know, of Western devotees. And so we watched for many, many years, and we've seen, even from the early days, that some jivas come and then they're carried away. You know, we had our vocabulary, came from Prabhupada. The word starts with a B.
Bloop.
Yes. And then the devotees developed some other categories also. Not fully bloop, but fringed. See, so, but we don't want that. We don't want that, because that's defeating the ultimate purpose of our gaining even the human form of life, you know. So when someone becomes very conscious that this is favorable, this is unfavorable, and they're in the mood of surrendering to Guru and Krishna, Sharanagati, well, then they'll follow. And if they have some, you know, temporary lull or some, they'll immediately get back on track, you know, and they'll condemn themselves. That purifies the heart, you know. So Krishna will help like that. But if somebody is always doing very sinful activities and not following the regulated principles, and, you know, we have the whole long list. But they just live their life like, practically like a person that has no spiritual knowledge at all. But yet they say, well, I believe in Krishna and this and that. So, okay, they have some sukriti from a previous life, but they're adding in this life so many detrimental effects from aparads and from sinful activities and all of that. You know, and of course, Krishna knows the heart of every jiva. Krishna knows the heart. Like, I'll give you an example. I like this example very much. Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj. So Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj, he was very well known for never wanting to hear anything about a Vaishnava who left, kind of, you know, who left. persons would come, oh, this Vaishnava left, he's doing this. He wouldn't even respond, Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj. You know what he would say? He would say, we don't know, we cannot see how much in his heart he is crying for Krishna. So Krishna's in the heart and he knows everything.
Yes.
It's hard for us to know and to judge. We lament. We feel sad if we see that someone, due to the influence of very strong material energy, falls away and stops practicing and this and that. But this can happen because of the weakness, of the jiva. But when someone's anarthas, by staying very fixed for a longer period of time and anarthas, then generally that won't happen. Because now Nishta is coming. And when Nishta comes, generally it's very difficult for the Vaishnava to be pulled away from the practices by previous samskars and so forth. So, Srila Prabhupada, I know this well-known story of one devotee in the very, very beginning, at 26 Second Avenue. I was reading it actually. Don't remember whose book it was. It might have been Shama Sundar's book. No, not Shama. It was, I think, Mukunda Maharaj's book. Happiness. No, what was it called? Miracle on Second Avenue. And there were certain individuals whose names were there. They got some initiated name from Prabhupada. They had everyone had their own relationship with Prabhupada in that very beginning period. But there's this one particular devotee who, I don't remember all the details. I'll try to find it and read it. But he'd been around for a while. And then one day, he just came and told Prabhupada that I can't stay. Srila Prabhupada read his heart at that time. And Prabhupada wanted him to stay, but Prabhupada could also see that he was being pulled away. And then as the devotee backed away from Prabhupada and went out the door, and Prabhupada said, please come back in the future. With tears in Prabhupada's eyes. So, the pure devotees, they know everything. They know everything. And only the conditioned souls can be purified by the mercy of the pure devotees. That's the only thing that can ultimately purify the conditioned souls. So we have our Vaishnava Sangha. And Sadhu Sangha is most essential thing. Because in the association of good practicing Vaishnavas, like even from the beginning, barely anybody was really advanced, but they had some scars from previous lives, and everyone is just a beginning student. Now you have persons who are practicing for many, many decades, And so if somebody wants bhakti, or they're a brand new person, or they've been around for a while, facility is there that they should seek out, try to live near or with the devotees, engage in your activities for maintaining your life and the lives of your dependents, and pursue bhakti. So the Upadeshamrita is the guidebook. It can be referred to any time, and I've done it. You can see how when you're kind of realizing, I've been pulled off track quite a bit here and there, And then you look at the Upadeshamrita and you look at the list and you do an honest self-assessment. Yep, not doing that. Yep, I'm doing that. And, and then it becomes very clear that this is infallible It's an infallible set of instructions actually given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. So we can't even begin to estimate really how essential and important it is to follow each and every one of them, to the very best of our ability. So we're studying Jana Sangha, right? And Jana Sangha is, let me just find where we left off here. Yeah. So he's got the 7 categories, right? The 7 categories. Okay. Yes. Well, let's just read the names of the 7 categories again. It is essential for every practitioner of bhakti to know how many types of persons exist who are averse to Bhagavan, because that's what we have to avoid, is associating with persons that are averse to Bhagavan. And he also talks about what constitutes Sangha, conversing with ordinary persons about worldly deeds. This is not qualified as Sangha. Rather, it is considered Sangha when such dealings are full of a binding affection. So that's what has to be avoided. Now, we should know how many types of persons exist who are averse to Bhagavan. Therefore, although we do not desire to do so, we are listing them here. They are of 7 types. First one, monists and atheists, and Mayavadis and Nastiks. Number 2, materialists, Vishayis. Number 3, those who associate with materialists. They're called Vishayi Sangis. Number 4, the opposite gender, Yoshit. Now that refers to, although the literal translation of the word Yoshit is women, it is apparent from the explanation that is coming that the intended meaning is, quote, inappropriately associating with the opposite gender. That's what it means. So, and that also applies for women associating with men, both ways. Number 5, those who illicitly associate with the opposite gender, they're called Yoshit Sangis. Number 6, those who make a show of following religious principles, Dharma Dvajis. And number 7, uncivilized and foolish persons of atrocious conduct. Durachari mudha buddhi antyaja.
Like absence.
Yeah. Foolish, uncivilized persons who have atrocious conduct. Duracharis. So we read about the monists and the atheists, the Mayavadis and the Nastiks. That we read about that category. We read about the materialists, association of Vishayis. Okay. And now people who associate with materialists, okay, yeah, I think we left off on, we read the first 2, and now we're on the third one, people who associate with materialists. All right, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying, both sense enjoyers, or materialists, that means Vishayis, and those who associate with the sense enjoyers, Vishayi Sangis, both of them are averse to Bhagavan. One who associates with a materialist is in fact a materialist himself, because he constantly meditates on sense objects. There are some persons who are not so much sense enjoyers themselves, but who take great pleasure in associating with sense enjoyers. The one should not associate with such persons also. Why? Because one will quickly become a sense enjoyer. You know how Prabhupada used to say, if you associate with a drunkard, you become a drunkard? Right, remember? Yeah. So, there are two types of sense enjoyers, and those who associate with sense enjoyers. Two types. Number one, those who have made Bhagavan part of their sense gratification. Wow. Now, I haven't read this yet, so I'm hearing it as I'm reading it. Those who have made Bhagavan part of their sense gratification. Let's see how he explains this. And the second kind, those whose sense gratification is for Bhagavan. Okay, so these are these are two types of sense enjoyers, Vishayis, and also those who associate with sense enjoyers, okay, Vishayi Sangis. The first one is those who have made Bhagavan part of their sense gratification. And the second type is those whose sense gratification is for Bhagavan. Okay, you can kind of see where he's going with this, right? He continues, the association of the second type of materialist is somewhat better than association with the first. What was the first type? Those who have made Bhagavan part of what? Their sense gratification. And the second type, those whose sense gratification is for Bhagavan. And here, he says, the association of the second type of materialist is somewhat better than association with the first. So what does he mean by this? Here he goes. Although materialists who enjoy pious sense gratification are better than sinful materialists, a practicing devotee should not associate with them until they become favorably inclined toward Sri Krishna. So here he's saying there's this type of materialist, he enjoys pious sense gratification, so they're better than the sinful materialists. A practicing devotee still, he should not associate with them until they become favorably inclined towards Sri Krishna. We'll read this and then we'll reflect upon it, what he's giving here. He says, simply dressing as a renunciant does not enable one to develop a natural detachment from sense objects. We can understand, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is living in Bengal in that time period. There's so many persons taking on the dress of sadhus and this and that, but not at all being detached and acting as renunciates. So many apasampadayas. So he says, even renunciants are often seen to collect objects of sense gratification. On the other hand, there are people surrounded by sense objects who appear to be materialists, but who internally adopt yukta vairagya. Yukta vairagya means appropriate renunciation, accepting everything favorable for the service of Bhagavan. So those persons, they're surrounded by sense objects. They appear to be materialists, but internally they adopt yukta vairagya, and they are fully absorbed in Bhagavad Bhajan. So after carefully contemplating these topics, the sadhak should give up the association of Vishayis and Vishayi Sangis and perform bhajan either in solitude or, if he is fortunate enough, in the association of saintly persons. So there's a lot to reflect upon in this long paragraph.
Well, we can see from our own experience how some of our senior godbrothers, would accept disciples, and then all of a sudden they'd be living very luxurious lives and not really being detached from it.
Right. Yes. That's one of the unfortunate developments that we've witnessed.
Yeah.
Actually, in our discussion the other day about the 3 symptoms, Labh, Puja, and Pratishta, Srila Sridhar Maharaj explains that in his Sri Guru and His Grace book, how the attachment for material things, Labh, means money and different objects of sense enjoyment and so forth, right? But not for the service of Krishna, right? So we've seen that exhibited in very unattractive ways, put it mildly, but that's because of offenses, because of anarthas, because of rejecting high sadhu sangha and desiring especially pratishta, followers, pratishta, the whole thing. But no one can maintain their bhakti if that's their objective. They cannot. They'll be pulled down by Maya.
In that book you're mentioning, Guru and His Grace, they forget that they're servants. Because a guru, he's serving his disciples. He's the best servant.
Yeah.
So they forget their position of being a servant.
Yes. They think that they're the recipient of worship. Even a guru. There's a statement by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur many, many years ago when I was faced with the ultimate choice to stay or not to stay in the institution. I was being confronted, that whole story of mine. And I could understand at that point, by reading Sri Guru and His Grace, many, many instructions took root in my heart at that time. And I could understand that this desire for pratishta, this was gradually developed in persons over time. And one statement was quoted by Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj, he was quoting Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. There he said that a Vaishnava never accepts any position. Meaning, the Vaishnava has only one designation. Is only one designation, Krishna Das, Vaishnava Das, Guru Das. That's all. He never accepts any position. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said, if a Vaishnava, if a person thinks that he has become Guru, if he thinks like that, now I'm Guru, then, what did he say? Then he becomes Guru. Instead of Guru, he becomes Guru. In Bengali, the word Guru means cow.
Bull.
No, it means cow.
Guru?
Guru. Yes. Guru, in Bengali language. So, meaning that a Vaishnava, he never thinks or feels, now I'm Guru, or conducts himself in that way. He always feels, I am servant. I am servant of my Guru. Like Prabhupada, how anyone can be as humble? He's done this incredible, miraculous seva. But on the appearance day of his spiritual master, he's lecturing and saying that actually I have not done anything. It is all the mercy of my Guru Maharaj, and he has sent all of you. You are actually the representatives of my Guru Maharaj, and you are helping me so much. Then he breaks down in that lecture, because you are helping me to serve the order of my Guru Maharaj. Thank you very much. You see? But this is how the pure devotees feel. So, like this, there are so many different types of materialists, and there's also pious materialistic persons. But actually, he's telling here, after carefully contemplating these topics, the sadhaka should give up the association of Vishayis and Vishayi Sangis, and he should perform bhajan, either in solitude, or, if he is fortunate enough, he should perform bhajan in the association of saintly persons, sadhu sangha. So, yeah, so he gives this example that simply dressing as a renunciant, that does not enable one to develop a natural detachment from sense objects. Even renunciants are often seen to collect objects of sense gratification. But on the other hand, there are people who are surrounded by sense objects, who appear to be materialists, but who internally they adopt yukta vairagya, and they are fully absorbed in Bhagavad bhajan. So, that means genuine Vaishnavas, even in Madhyam level, right? They're living in that way where they are not attached to the sense objects. They may be in household life, this, that. I mean, we have the highest example, Pundarik Vidyanidhi. Yes. But he's not even, he's like, Maha Bhagavad. He's direct associate, descended down. But he showed that. Even Gadadhar Pandit became a little bewildered. This is all Leela,
To show.
Yeah. To show. Yes, to show. Okay, we've gone over the time, but we had a good discussion, and tomorrow we're going to discuss the fourth and the fifth type out of the seven, which is the opposite gender and those who illicitly associate with the opposite gender. That's a big one. So we'll discuss that tomorrow.
And what time, Pacific time, will that start?
You mean California time?
Yeah.
Generally we're starting at the latest at 7:30, but we're shooting for 7:15 p.m. 7:15 p.m.
For the benefit of our listeners.
Yes, for the benefit of
viewers.
our listeners.
We have at least 5 phones.
My pranams to all the Vaishnavas who are tuning in across the globe. Hare Krishna. Gaur Premanande. Shri Upadeshamritam ki jai. Shri Rupa Goswami Pada ki jai. Jai Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai. Shri Rupa Nuga Guru Varga ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Samagata Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Bolo Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Nitai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyaya Keshavasya Krishna Bhakti Pradevi Sajivachai Namo Namaha Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhudeva Cha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo